Number 3. I'm a wrestler, and I spend most of my time on the road in hotel rooms. Well, this night I took an Uber home after being diagnosed with a minor concussion. The drive took forever, but I couldn't wait to get home. When I arrived, the environment was peaceful, and it was around midnight. I rolled my suitcase to my front door. The knocking noise it made when it hits the spaces between the rocks was terribly loud. I propped up my suitcase on my porch as I fiddled with my keys trying to find the right one. While doing this, I took a look around. I noticed my curtains were pulled open when I remembered having them shut. I blamed it on my incredibly unreliable short-term memory. Just as I unlocked my door, I could hear someone moving around from the other side. It sounded like someone was rushing around inside my house. At this point, I was now on high alert. I quickly opened my door and shouted, "Get the fuck out of my house!" Probably not the most civil approach, but the thought of someone inside my house, most likely stealing my belongings, really pissed me off. I flicked the switch and turned on the hall lights, and I could see that all my doors were open. Somebody was in my house, and I was going to find them. I left my suitcase on my porch and ran into my kitchen, grabbed the sharpest knife in the kitchen drawer, and checked every single room. I found nothing. I assumed they escaped, so I shut all my doors and made sure that they were locked. I then sat down on my sofa and pulled out my iPhone. What I saw, and the reflection of the blank screen, made my skeleton jump out of my skin. The one place I didn't check was behind my couch, and I could now see in the reflection of my phone that someone was standing right behind me. The person then noticed that I saw him and charged at me, screaming like a maniac. In a span of only a few seconds, I grabbed the knife that was on my coffee table in front of me, turned around and stabbed the man in his shoulder. I then made sure that he didn't go anywhere. The cops arrived soon after, and they sent him to the nearest hospital. I looked around my house to see if anything was taken. Nothing seemed to be out of place. I assumed that this creepy guy was just squatting in my house and was most likely homeless. I even felt kind of bad for stabbing him, but it was noted as self-defense. Number 2. This happened a while ago. Me and my brother Ron were in my room watching football, screaming at the screen when our team would do something idiotic. We were about 40 minutes into the game. Ron slammed his fist into the remote, turning the television off by accident. I turned the TV back on, and as the screen loaded back up, we heard footsteps coming from downstairs. Ron and I quickly turned our heads to the bedroom door. I turned down the volume to hear the noises clearer. "I think someone's inside," Ron said. I could hear the shudder in his voice. He was anxious. "No, it's probably just the dog," I responded. Ron, however, was a lot more cautious. He walked over to the bedroom door and locked it. The click it made alerted the intruder. We heard even more footsteps. Ron then whispered, "That's not the dog." Ron, acting nervous, put me on edge, so I agreed with him and turned off the bedroom lights. Ron then looked around the room, trying to find some sort of object we could use as a weapon. I sat next to the door, with my ear placed on our wall. They were so thin that if there was someone inside the house, I would be able to hear them. Nothing happened at first. It was just dead silence. "Take a look," Ron said. He had his phone turned on in case we needed to call the police. I lay on my chest and looked through the gap under the bedroom door. I saw blackness, but I could barely make out a pair of boots standing a little ways down the upstairs hall. I felt both hands shaking as I pushed myself back up to my feet. I tiptoed over to Ron, who was waiting anxiously for the answer. "Someone's here," I whispered as low as I could. Ron's face went pale as he stared into nothingness. At one point, I thought he was going to black out on me. I pulled Ron over to our window. I quietly opened the window and looked down at the grass, 2 stories below my current position. Ron was still in a different world, as if he was blocking himself out from reality, leaving the responsibility to me. I tried not to pay much attention to him and instead focused on escaping. I took Ron's phone out of his hand as he crouched on the carpet. He had installed one of those apps where specific fingerprints can enter the phone. I took his hand, which was shockingly freezing, and held his index finger on the phone screen. I jumped out of my skin when the phone let out a loud beep, and all of a sudden, I could hear footsteps running straight to the bedroom door. I quickly typed in 911 and put one leg out of the window. I heard loud banging on the bedroom door and shouting,
"I'm going to kill you."
I landed on the porch roof and shouted at Ron to snap back into action. Ron stood up quickly and stumbled outside of the window. He landed on the roof beside me as I forced the window shut again. "We need to jump," I said. I could hear faint thumping behind the walls. The intruder was struggling to get inside our room. I jumped off the porch roof and sprained my ankle. Ron was wobbling on the edge of the roof. "Quick," I said. I avoided shouting as whoever the intruder was would have known that we were outside. Ron touched his chest, head, right shoulder, and left shoulder, making a cross before he jumped. We were a good 6 blocks away before I realized that I had left my dog behind. I burst into tears from fear of what just happened and worrying if my dog was hurt. I talked to the police operator as both me and Ron slowly walked back to the house. We heard sirens and I felt a weight lift off our shoulders. As we approached our house, we noticed that the police were now outside. Me and Ron hid beside our porch. Both of us were waiting to come face to face with the intruder. 4 cops came out, but there was no man, and one of them was holding my dog Lewis. I hugged him and apologized to him for leaving him behind. The cops explained that there was no one inside, and there was nothing stolen either. In fact, they explained that there was nothing to even prove that someone had invaded our property. They never found him. Ron installed some CCTV cameras in both of our houses, but I can assure you, I haven't had a good night's sleep since. Number 1. On Friday, June 1st at approximately 4:40 p.m., I was at home in my dining room, sitting at the table working on a database for my unit. The dining room is at the front of the house, with the window next to my front door. The blinds were about halfway up, and it was still bright out, so no lights were on. It was a bit cloudy and rain was on and off. While sitting there doing my work, someone approached my door. They proceeded to begin ringing the bell very quickly, as well as pounding on the door. This set my dog off, completely off, in a way I've only ever seen him act once before in the past, when he led police to an armed man mugging people, which is a completely different story for another time. My dog was at the window with the blinds partway up, barking at the person. I got up and looked through the peephole. At the door was a late teens, early 20s looking African-American male. He had nothing in his hands, and he wasn't acting as if there was an emergency. There was a vehicle parked in my driveway still running. Upon assessing the situation, I deemed that there was no emergency and he wasn't selling anything. I made the decision not to answer my door, as I never answer the door if I don't know who it is, or if they're going door to door. The slamming on the door and the ringing of the bell lasted approximately 3 minutes or so. The person stopped and went back to the car. He entered the rear passenger door and they slowly backed out of the driveway. I watched the car as it left to make sure they were just going to each house. They backed out and went around the corner. This struck me as odd, because the road they went down was a dead end. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I started to get this really bad feeling. As a citizen and a soldier with combat training, I always like to be ready. I had an EDC weapon with me, in this case, a Glock 26 Gen 4, loaded with 147 Winchester Ranger T rounds. After watching the car leave, I quickly went to my bedroom to grab my shoes and take a look around. It was now approximately 4:45 p.m. I slipped on my shoes and was about to lift my foot up on the bed to begin tying the first foot when I heard a large bang at my back door. I immediately dropped what I was doing and took a defensive position. From my vantage point, I could clearly see the back door, and they could not see me. Standing at the low and ready point, there was a second large bang at the back door. It flew open so hard that the doorknob and the deadbolt put holes in the wall. I brought my gun up, and 2 African American males began to enter. I yelled at them to stop. The first male continued to advance towards me. I let off 1 round into his head, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. The other guy then turned and ran out of the door, jumped my fence. I wasn't going to shoot him in the back as much as I wanted to. I stayed in the home and made sure the doorway was clear and nobody was hiding around the corner. I never went outside or near the dead body. Once I made sure the area was clear, I pulled out my cell phone while keeping my gun trained on the door and the suspect on the ground. I proceeded to call 911, then my girlfriend, who was on her way home after picking up her kids at daycare, and then my unit to inform them of what happened. The police operator instructed me to stay inside until law enforcement arrived, and to put my gun down and have my ID ready. The first sheriff waited for the others to arrive. They pulled me out and cleared the house. I made sure my gun was in an area they had access to, and pretty much every other sheriff in the county, as well as firemen and EMT, arrived on the scene as well. A side note, I later found out that there was more than just 2 guys involved. There was 4 in total, the 2 who entered the house, and another 2 in the car, a female and another male. As of the time of this post, all are accounted for, 3 in prison and 1 in the ground. Hey guys, Unit 522 here, and I want to thank you very much for watching my video. I would appreciate it very much if you would share, like, and comment. And if you're new to this channel, become one with the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story or experience that you want featured on this channel, you can always send it to my email or post it on the Free Horror Stories subreddit. The links for those can be found in the description below. If you would like to help out this channel even more, consider a PayPal donation. And for more updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter. There's nothing wrong with a little darkness in your life, as long as you never forget there's always a reason to be afraid.